Welcome in to a live stream episode of Barnes on Bama. Hope you guys are doing well. I am obviously coming to you live just after the Alabama Kentucky game. Uh, just got back from the stadium. Wanted to talk about this game. I'm sure Alabama fans, Kentucky fans alike are going to want to talk about this one. It was a phenomenal game, and I think that there's a lot that we learned about this team in this game. I mean, LeBaron Philon only had 2 points to start it. Aiden Holloway just has a phenomenal game. Noah Williamson had his coming out party, I guess, for this one. Overall, I thought that Alabama had a really, really good game. And the fact that you saw the injuries and the people that didn't play in this one or that were limited in this one, like Amari Allen looked phenomenal in the first half, then goes out with the ankle injury. You're not sure how much he's going to be able to play. He is able to return in the second half, but really excited to see such a big win. Thought that this was a really, really good game to get off and get started for conference play ahead of the Vandy game that's going to be happening later this week. So, I want to talk all about it. Thank you guys for joining. See Miss Cindy's in here. Happy New Year. Great win versus Kentucky. 100% agree. This was a huge win. If you didn't see my pregame article that I did when I did the article and the write up, I did have Alabama winning by a score of 95-81. I had Aiden Holloway as my player to watch. My score prediction was basically dead on. Obviously, got the margin almost exact. Few too many points for both teams, but that's okay. And then Aiden Holloway was absolutely the player in this game. I thought that, Aiden Holloway, when you look at what he's done this season, Aiden Holloway has double digits in every game this season outside of the Arizona game. And Nate Oates has, admitted the fact that Aiden Holloway probably shouldn't have even played in that Arizona game. He still was dealing with some major wrist injuries, and he was not himself in that game. So every game since that, Aiden has been absolutely incredible. And I thought that this game fit his game's set perfectly. I see a couple of people talking about Noah Williamson. Both Miss Cindy said had his breakout game and Holloway was clutch. And then Cade Smith says Noah Williamson stepped up big time with Sherelle going down. Yeah, I mean, and that's something I want to talk about. As much as if anybody's subscribed to me and has seen me talk about it, Noah Williamson has been borderline unplayable for a large stretch of this season. And, this was a great game for him. I was very concerned when I saw Aiden Sherelle. For those of you that may have missed it, Aiden Sherelle did not he got injured on the floor and he was able to, check himself out. He was sitting on the bench. It was just after the Amari Allen injury. And then Aiden limped to the locker room and then never returned. Aiden, for those of you unaware, my seats are just behind Alabama's bench. So I kind of sit near the tunnel. And Aiden warmed up on the bike a couple of times. It looked like he was going to come back in. But I honestly think this was a situation that Noah Williamson was playing well enough that Nate wanted him to keep playing. And as long as he, was playing well enough and the score was what it was, I think that Aiden Sherelle probably was available in the second half, just did not play in the second half. Like I said, it did look like he warmed up and got ready. He did not warm up, coming out of halftime, but he definitely warmed his body up, got on the bike, was trying to stay loose. And then Noah obviously playing as well as he played. Nate just let it ride. I'm super excited to see that. For me, I thought that the thing that Noah did that I was so shocked by is it to me it looked like there was a clear emphasis put on Jaden Quaintance in this game. At the very beginning of this game, obviously Alabama starts our normal starters. Amari Allen starting at the 4 with Taylor Bowen out, and Aiden Sherrell's at the 5. Then we were swapping in Keaton Bristow. Aiden Sherrill gets a quick foul. Keaton Bristow comes in. And then the minute that Kentucky subbed in Jaden Quaintance, we immediately grabbed Aiden Sherrill off the bench. And it looked like Nate was going to be mirroring Quaintance with Sherrill the rest of the game. Because anytime that Malachi Moreno was on the floor, Nate was more than comfortable playing Amari Allen against him or Keaton Bristow against him, somebody much smaller against him. But anytime that Jaden Quaintance came on the floor, he wanted to have Amari or Aiden Sherrill going up against him. So that's why when I saw Aiden Sherrill go out and you had Noah Williamson come in at the end of the first half, I was honestly terrified. I was really concerned And, I feel like I have good reason to be. Noah Williamson played 2 minutes in the Yale game at one point and had 2 minutes, 3 fouls, and a turnover. So, he had struggled at large points of this season. I think he had 11 points coming into this game total for the season. He finishes in double figures. He plays phenomenally, no turnovers, has just one foul. He did airball a three, but it was the shot that he probably should have taken. I'm completely fine with it. That's a shot Nate wants him taking. He's a big guy that can step out and shoot it. Honestly, looked completely fine. He was strong on the rebounds. He never fell down, which is crazy of me to say, but his athleticism at times has struggled where he, loses his base and falls down. I thought that this was his best game in an Alabama uniform, and it wasn't particularly close. So the fact that he was able to mirror Jaden Quaintance in that way, he deserves a ton of credit for. I think he deserves the most credit for what he did because Nate was clearly very concerned with what Quaintance could do after what he saw in that St. John's game. And then, we basically completely nullified Quaintance in that way because Noah Williamson was able to do what he did. I see some other comments. Way to go, boys, for cheering out the post Rose Bowl depression. 100%. We're not going to talk about that one. I will have a video later coming out on the channel talking about it, but that is not today. We're in basketball mode today. Any idea why Bethea didn't get minutes? Stuck with the hot hands. I think it's a combination of hot hand, and I also think that, obviously Bethea came in at one point in this game, and I think Nate had a play called up. Bethea took a deep three and immediately got pulled. And Nate was pissed. I think it was a situation where I'm not sure what Jalil Bethea's current, Nate has openly said to people and to boosters at different events that the problem with Jalil Bethea oftentimes is between the ears. When he is in the right headspace, he is as good as anybody in the country. And when he's not, he struggles. I think that this was a situation where Nate was concerned that Jalil wasn't in the right mindset, so to speak, because he was taking that shot and like almost playing AAU ball. There is a sense where obviously Nate does give you a lot of freedom on offense, but it's freedom within a system, right? It's not freedom to do whatever you want whenever you want it. There is a situation of if we have a play called, if we've got a mismatch, if we got somebody we're going after, then you have to still do that. You can't just take a shot whenever you want to take a shot. And I think that's something that honestly, even Aiden Holloway had to learn last season, right? You saw sometimes last season, or LeBaron Fallon even gets it sometimes this season. When you see LeBaron Fallon take a mid-range, you didn't see one in this game, but if you see LeBaron take a mid-range two, sometimes Nate's furious and sometimes he's completely happy with it. And that confuses people. People think Nate Oates is anti-mid-range. And sure, but anti mid range within the offense, right? He's anti mid range at 20 seconds on the shot clock with other guys wide open. He's not anti mid range when, you've made 6 of the last points and there's 8 seconds on the shot clock and, you do a turnaround and you make it, right? He's not going to get mad about that, right? So it really just depends on when you take the shot, how you take the shot, where you take the shot. Aiden Holloway takes a shot from the logo, it goes in. It was fully, in transition. He's been hot. He's making all these shots. Nate's fine with him pulling that shot. Jalil Bethea, we have a play called up, and he takes a long three that really seemed out of sorts. Jalil is absolutely capable of making those long threes, but it didn't seem like it was his shot, and he almost forced it. Nate's pissed. So I think, honestly, that's honestly what cost him some minutes. He did, gain some extra minutes with some foul problems and with Amari Allen going down. But I think honestly, it was the offense didn't seem to flow as well when Bethea was in. I think there's going to be games he's going to be really good this season. There's going to be some games I think that he doesn't play a whole lot. That I think that's kind of what okay, makes sense. Cool. So the guys who I really want to shout out, obviously we talked about Aiden Holloway. I thought that Aiden Holloway played, a phenomenal game. He goes for 26 points. He has 4 rebounds. He has 5 assists. He did have a couple of turnovers. Those happen, especially when you've got a guy that played the amount of minutes, 34 minutes that he did. Not going to worry too much about the turnovers. Obviously, I'm sure Nate will make some comments to him, but, those happen, especially when you're playing the way you're playing. overall, Alabama just had 10 turnovers as a team. You would love to see that number a little lower, but with the pace that we play at, 10 turnovers you will take every day. As a team, Alabama ends up shooting 15 of 38 from three. And the thing that I think you need to realize when you're talking 15 of 38 from three, that includes 1 of 7 from Latrell Wrightsell, 0 of 6 from LeBaron Philon, and 0 of 2 from Jalil Bethea, right? So really, that 3-point shooting is largely based on Houston Mallette goes 4 of 6, Amari Allen goes 3 of 4, Aiden Holloway goes 6 of 8, right? Incredible backcourt. And that's what we've talked about all offseason and all season with Alabama basketball is this backcourt is the best backcourt in the country, and it's not particularly close. They are so deep, they can do anything and everything. And they have guys where if somebody's having a bad night, it's okay. Somebody else will step up. And in this game, it was Amari Allen, who had 6 offensive rebounds. He was absolutely an animal on the glass, as well as 11 points. Aiden Holloway with the 26, as we mentioned, and then Houston Mallette with 14 points. He had 5 rebounds, including 2 offensive, and was absolutely dynamite from behind the arc. He missed 1 wide open 3, which honestly I was shocked didn't go in, but overall it was a really, really good shooting night from Houston Mallette. I saw that his dad was in attendance for this one, so I'm sure that would mean a lot to Houston. His dad, for those of you unaware, is an AD at South Carolina, assistant AD or associate AD at South Carolina, was previously the athletic director at UC Riverside. I asked him about their relationship during SEC Media Days. Somebody he's very, very close with. So I'm sure, playing that well in front of his dad is something that he will cherish. Absolutely. I saw his dad like videoing a bunch of the games or a bunch of the game. It was very, very cool to see. There were guys who I thought that still made an impact. We talked about a guy like London Jemison was somebody who this was his first game back in quite a few. London Jemison did not play for the last couple of games after the slight injury in the South Florida game. They had been trying to work him back, and he was able to get some solid minutes. He got 4 rebounds. He did have a couple of fouls. He hit a big 3. I thought that London Jemison is somebody that you're going to have to work back to have the amount of minutes that I think he will eventually get. I think London Jemison's a guy that in SEC play will regularly get 20 minutes, but there will be some games like this where he gets, 12 to 14 minutes. I think that that's just a part of how the flow of the game works and who you're going up against. I wouldn't be too concerned about that. I think that he probably would have got a few extra minutes had he been better conditioned, but I think in your first game back, you're not going to get quite as much. Keaton Bristow, I thought that at times Keaton Bristow was fine. At times his defense was a little lackluster. I know Nate was really upset with him at a couple of times during the defense. This was definitely not his best defensive game, but he was okay. Completely fine. But like I said, Noah Williamson overall had a really, really good game. He officially had no turnovers. He had 2 steals. He had a block. He had 2 assists. He had 4 rebounds, including a phenomenal rebound over Jaden Quainton and Malachi Moreno. Really, really good player. And the fact that you can play a game with Aiden Sherrill, your starting center, playing just 9 minutes, no Taylor Bolbowen, and a lackluster performance from Keaton Bristow, but yet you get Noah Williamson to step up and play 18 minutes and play as well as he did, just absolutely phenomenal. To put it into perspective, 18 minutes. The only other game this season he had 18 minutes was the UNLV game, which Alabama won by almost 40 points. And as I mentioned, he had 14 points heading into this game today. And he has 10 points in this game today. So really, really happy to see him, perform as well as he did. I thought the fact that he didn't get into any foul trouble, only committed to 1 foul, was a really, really big deal for me. No turnovers was absolutely huge. But I thought that overall the team played really, really well. Rammer Jammer says, Trelly's a very important defensive piece. Recent shooting struggles, do you think that they can get back to having scoring impact he used to? I think that a couple of things are because of that. I think one thing is he's playing a different position than he used to. I think he's handling the ball a little bit more than he did in some other seasons. So I think that is part of the issue. I think some of the issue is I think he's just getting sped up a little bit. I think that he has not got fully back into his groove after the injury. Obviously, he's a very big impact, as you said, on the defense. He's one of our best perimeter defenders, so he is somebody that I expect will play, obviously a lot of minutes. However, he's somebody that just has struggled, unfortunately, from behind the arc. I will tell you though, he's not a guy who shoots 26%, and that's currently what he's at for the season. His worst shooting season ever in college was one season at Cal State Fullerton, which he took 77 3-point attempts and was 28%. Every season since then, he's been 36 or better from a percentage. I fully expect that he is going to turn a corner shooting the ball. I would not suspect that Trelly is going to have that type of shooting slump for the rest of the season. So, is he going to get back to the 44%, just flamethrower from behind the arc? Maybe, maybe not. But I do think that he's going to be back to closer to high 30% range. And that is a substantial step up from the 26% he's currently at, right? Statistically, him being a 26% shooter this season is crazy. I'm sure Nate is going to be looking into that from the analytics company and whatever, and just see kind of is he forcing it, what's happening. But Trelly is too good of a shooter to, Nate's talked about he's one of the best shooters he's ever coached, him and Aden Holloway. So I wouldn't be super concerned. Obviously, I'm a little curious as to why this is happening so far, but I think that he will return to more of normalcy. Maybe not 44%, but like way more normal than he currently is. Miss Cindy says, hope Bol Bowen and Aiden Sherrill return soon. Absolutely agree. Even though you were able to get a huge game out of Noah Williamson in this one, you have, and this is crazy of me to say, but it's 100% true. You have a way better team in Vanderbilt that you're going to be playing on Wednesday afternoon or Wednesday evening. Vanderbilt is a really, really good team. Better offense, better defense, just a phenomenal team. They are not super big, but they have a guy in Devin McLaughlin that, is really, really good. Jalen Washington, really good. So they do have a little bit of size. They're a little bit undersized. So it's a game where I think, Aiden Sherrill should be able to have some success. Taylor Bol Bowen should be able to have some success. I think that both guys will be able to have a lot of success, but I think that, you're going to need them to play what they're capable of. The other thing that I think you need to realize is even though Alabama does end up scoring 89 points in this game, the pace of this game against Kentucky was actually fairly slow at 72 possessions. To put that into perspective, the games that we played against Kentucky last season were 78 possessions, 80 possessions, and 83 possessions. So this was actually a substantially slower game than we had in any of our three matchups last season. Part of that I think is helpful for Noah, because Noah's biggest issue this season, other than at times him falling down and some of the turnovers and stuff, has been his conditioning. Even when he has like a decent play, his conditioning is not ready to run at this pace that we run at. And I think that the slower paced game that you actually had in this Kentucky game made it where Noah was more capable and able to play the 18 minutes that he played, because it wasn't 18 of as fast of minutes as it sometimes would be, if that makes sense. Like I said, oftentimes this Alabama Kentucky game I think is going to be very, very fast. And like I said, this one was just not as much. When you look at the Vanderbilt game, Vanderbilt is 41st in tempo. To put that in perspective, Kentucky's 168th this season. So with the fact that Vandy is so fast in tempo, and then Alabama obviously being 12th in tempo, I do expect that the pace of this Vandy game to be substantially faster. And so because of that, I don't think that Noah will be quite as effective. I still think that he could have, a spurt of decent minutes, but I don't think that, you should expect 20 minutes out of him when it's going to be 20 minutes at that type of pace. Same thing with Aiden Sherrill. That's kind of the issue that he ran into in the Arizona game. He played really, really well, but he played so many minutes that he ended up starting having full body cramps. So I know that's something that Nate mentioned about wanting to be able to swap those guys in and out so that they wouldn't have the issues just due to the pace that we're playing at. Again, I think that's going to be a bigger issue in the Vandy game because they're more undersized and they're not going to be going for post ups and such, right? They're a team that likes to play with tempo, likes to play more of a analytical style of basketball. So I do think that this Kentucky team is going to be, or sorry, this Vandy team is going to be very, very good. that is something that I just want you guys to understand. Like I said, I do think that Taylor and Aiden are going to be very much needed for this this Vandy game because of that. Like I said, very happy for Noah to have played as well as he did. I just I want to see him do that in a game that has a faster tempo. And the fact that this one only had 72 possessions is something that is a little curious to me. It's just something that kind of jumps out. Does anybody have any other questions? Probably only going to go live till about 3 o'clock, so we got 30 more minutes. I will eventually move over to the Vanderbilt game, but want to answer any questions that anybody may have. In the meantime, while y'all are getting those put in the chat, wanted to mention Alabama now up to number 2 in the country in offensive efficiency. They are 66 in the country in defensive efficiency. They are doing part of the reason why the offensive efficiency is doing so well is Alabama is 5th in the country at not turning over the ball on offense. And that is a very, very big deal, right? That's something that NATO's teams have struggled with at times. To put into perspective, our Final Four team even was 98th in the country. The team, Brandon Miller's team that, won 31 games was 227th in the country in turnovers. The team before that was 271. So NATO's has definitely had some issues with turnovers in the past. I know a lot of the reason behind that for this season is the fact that you have so many guards that are so good. It really helps from an overall turnover rate perspective. Again, that's part of the reason why your offense has been so good. But I think that it is worth mentioning. Additionally, I think that Alabama, in this game, they stepped up from a rebounding perspective. This was one of our best offensive rebounding games of the season. Again, a lot of that was on the back of Amari Allen, who had 6 offensive rebounds. I thought he was flying all over the court. I thought that he was a huge deal in this one. Early in this game, Alabama was winning the rebounding battle 12-3. Amari had more rebounds than Kentucky had as a team. Amari Allen was flying all over the court, and I think that he is one of the biggest additions to this team and is somebody that, people really underestimated, really thought that he was not going to be a super impact player. And now not only is he an impact player, he's starting, he's got 11 and 9. I think this is actually multiple games of him where he finishes with 9 rebounds. It's actually back-to-back games with 9 rebounds. He's just been one of the best rebounders in the team and one of the best players on the team. And when you add in the fact that he has been shooting the ball better and better, his UTSA game, he went 1 of 6 from 3 and he went 0 of 3 against Arizona. But honestly, outside of those games, he's been really, really shooting well from 3. Went on a streak of 2 of 4 over, 4 or 5 games. Goes 1 of 3 against Kennesaw, 2 of 4 against Yale, and then 3 of 4 in this game. The fact that he can add 2 or 3 threes any given game and just does a good job shooting them in transition as well as being the rebounder that he is. I think that Amari Allen is the player that, helps bring the ceiling of this team even higher than I had thought coming into this year. Yeah, so calling our game, Billis said he felt like Alabama was better than the record. He was very complimentary. I mean, I wouldn't 100% agree with that. I think Billis is also trying to make sure that the average everyday fan doesn't look at the record and see Alabama at 10-3 and think this is a bad basketball team. When you look at, right, if we look at KenPom's numbers as of right now, Alabama has the number 5 strength of schedule and the number 10 non-conference strength of schedule. But again, when you look at the non-conference strength of schedule, there are 3 teams in the top 20 in both KenPom ranking and non-conference strength of schedule. Most of the teams that are in that high non-conference strength of schedule are teams that just schedule a ton of bye games against a bunch of really good players, right? Texas A&M, Corpus Christi, your Bethune-Cookmans of the world, the people that are just trying to schedule a bunch of people to make a bunch of money. Alabama is the highest power conference team in terms of strength of schedule at 10th in the country. The only other 2 teams that have that type of strength of schedule is Michigan and Kansas. again, so he just wants you to understand that yes, this team is 11-3, or I guess 10-3 at the time of him calling the game, but yes, the team is 10-3, but this Alabama team lost to, statistically three of the best teams in the country. Three of the top five, top six, depending upon what you want to rank them as. And so because of that, I think that people just need to understand that sure, Alabama lost some games, but this is a situation where Alabama maybe isn't a top five team currently, but maybe they're a top 10 to 15 team. And I think that's what he was really wanting to let people know. Versus if you're a Kentucky person and you see them sitting at 9-4, their only wins of the season that they had against teams that are decent was St. John's and Indiana, the back-to-back games just before the Bellarmine game and this one. They had lost to Gonzaga and Carolina and Michigan State and Louisville. So really all of the big games they had played to this point, they had lost, whereas Alabama had wins over Illinois and Clemson and St. John's and Maryland and South Florida and Yale, right? South Florida and Yale are two teams that a lot of people may be like, oh, yeah, those are whatever teams. Those two teams are better than anybody Kentucky had beaten, not named Indiana and St. John's, right? So I think that's what Jay Billis also wanted the average fan to understand, because I think some people, unfortunately, don't watch basketball until March Madness, and some people don't watch basketball during football season. When football's still going on, a lot of people just don't watch basketball, and I think so. I think that's what Jay Billis was trying to make sure people were understanding. When is Hannah due back? I am not 100% sure, Cade. That's something that I actually will be very curious to see if Nate Oates gives an update on. It was something that I'd heard where it sounded like he potentially was going to be back for this one, but then he came out in sweats and just wasn't going to play at all. I have not heard what the medical condition is that he had. I did see that Taylor Balboa was wearing a ankle brace on his left leg. So I'm pretty sure that's what his injury was. Coming out of halftime, Taylor was running a little bit, trying to stretch it. So I do think that Taylor's injury is related to his left ankle, but I'm not sure what Davion Hannah's is. I know that he called it a medical condition. Not 100% sure what that is. So we'll be very curious. Sounds like Georgia just pulled out a win. Miss Cindy tells us Georgia wins 104-100 over Auburn in Athens. Great. That is great to see. Obviously, I think Georgia is going to be a team that I think a lot of people looked at as being a pretty bad team this coming into the season, but Mike White has done something much different this season than he has done in seasons past. He is playing a lot faster. They're currently third in tempo and second in average possession length. They've had more than looks like 74 possessions in every game this season. They are just running. And I think that is something that will help them, right? His teams are scoring a lot of points this season. The Alabama Georgia game now looks more, promising than it had in seasons past. That's a game that's going to be at Georgia the last week of the season. So it is something that I am very curious to see, but obviously Georgia taking down Auburn is something that we need to monitor, both because it's funny that Auburn lost and also because Georgia, may be a better team coming into this season than we gave them credit for. The problem with Georgia, we're talking about the wins that they have. They lost to the best team they had played in Clemson to this point, and their only other win in the top 100 was Cincinnati, right? So I think that's exactly what I'm trying to say is South Florida and Yale are better than every win they had except for Cincinnati, right? And again, that goes to the whole thing that Billis was talking about is if you just look at, oh, they played South Florida, they played Yale, and you don't know anything about how college basketball works or analytics or whatever, you would think these are really bad teams. Statistically, Yale and South Florida are better than any win that Georgia had prior to Cincinnati, right? Now, Georgia may be a very good team. They may, have just lost the Clemson game and maybe they turn out and they're a, top 30 team in the country. Cool. That'd be great. But I think that's what people have to understand, that maybe don't stay as abreast of college basketball all season. That I think people like me do, if I'm watching these games and I'm doing all the research that I'm doing before these games, that's something that I recognize. And I think that's something that I talked about in the Kentucky preview is Kentucky obviously had turned a little bit of a corner against Indiana and St. John's. But Indiana and St. John's, neither of those teams have the backcourt that Alabama does, and neither of those teams have the shooting that Alabama does. I mean, Alabama even saw that in the game that they played against St. John's. St. John's has a great front court, but did not have a good backcourt. And the difference in the Alabama game against Kentucky is Kentucky just was unable to score with Alabama. And at a certain point, they were trading twos for threes. They would get a two in transition and then would give up a three on the other end. And that math problem is never going to work out. So that's what it really feels like. That I think some people just need to be aware of when you're talking about these games is, like I said, I think that Alabama played a great game, but I also think that the Kentucky roster construction is one of the worst I've ever seen. The fact that they spent $22 million on a roster that just doesn't have shooters is something that if I was a Kentucky fan, I would be questioning every single day. I would be questioning how you have a team that you spent $22 million on a roster that is for Mark Pope, right? And the reason I say for Mark Pope's team last season shot 34% from three. Sorry, 37% from three, number 24 in the country. It was a fast-paced team. It honestly was similar to Nate Oates in an analytical style. You wanted to play fast, you wanted to shoot threes, you wanted to run in transition. And this season, they're shooting 33% as a team from three. Then to go with that, they're giving up an assist on 60% of their shots that they're giving up, which means that you're not staying attached from a defensive perspective, which is part of the reason why Alabama had so many open looks from three. Alabama's hitting the wide open man, and that's just easy shots, right? If you don't come out on our shooters, it is Alabama will take 53s. Nate Oates is not afraid of that, right? Other coaches may tell you not to take 53s, but Nate Oates is, if you're open, take the shot. And I think that that's something that Kentucky's system this season is just not set to play against. And if I was a Kentucky fan, I would be very, very confused why currently the only player on our team, I guess we have two, but the only two players on our team shooting better than 37% from three are Colin Chandler at 39% and Trent Noah at 40%. I guess you tried to bring in a guy in Cam Williams that you thought would be better. You thought Jalen Lowe would be a better shooter. I think they thought Mohamed Diabate would be a better shooter, although I don't know what told you that because, yes, he shot well last season, but he's not a volume three-point guy. I'm not 100% sure what led Kentucky fans to believe that they were going to have such an elite shooting team, but you spent $22 million and this is what you got. So I think that's where I think that some people need to understand about the way these rosters work. Nate Oates has built a cohesive team, whereas Kentucky has good players. And I think that that's what you're seeing even out of a team like Michigan. I think Michigan did kind of the best of both. They got really good players that play well together. Yes, they spent a lot of money. They still spent a fraction of what Kentucky did. So if I'm a Kentucky fan, I'm definitely confused on how we have the shooters that we have on this team and why the people haven't panned out that haven't panned out. I don't know if it's coaching. I don't know if it's scheme. I don't know what it is. But it is very, very curious. And it's something that Nate Oates has clearly taken advantage of now 4 times in a row. Alabama has beaten Kentucky 4 times in a row, and Mark Pope seems to have no answer against Nate Oates because in every game that they've played to this point, Nate Oates has had the upper hand, and really none of them have ever been close. The only game that I think Alabama and Kentucky played that was close was their very first matchup when Alabama beat Kentucky on the road in Rupp Arena 102-97. That was the only close game that they've played of the 4 matchups they've played. The other 3 have been absolute domination. And I think that Kentucky fans are very quickly going to get sick of that, especially when they've spent the amount of money they spent on that roster. So I don't know if the answer is Mark Pope's gone. I don't know if the answer is you got to get more of somebody who's better at roster construction, like a guy who's handling the roster. I know that for Alabama, that's Preston Murphy. Like maybe they change up there. I'm not sure what's going to happen, but if I'm a Kentucky fan, I'm confused how you're this deep into the season and you spend the amount of money you spent and you just don't have shooters. You got to have more shooters, and it's clearly the problem when you're looking at Kentucky this season. Because honestly, this game, Alabama's transition defense struggled. Kentucky got a lot of points in transition, and that was the one place where they were able to have success. When Kentucky was not in transition, their offense was non-existent. It just was non-existent. Their offense was not good in the half court. It was great in transition. I thought Jalen Lowe and Otega Owe were really, really good in transition. But when it got into the half court, neither one of them seemed to know what was going on, and Kentucky just was unable to do much. So I think that that's something that, Alabama can obviously work on his transition defense, but Kentucky's going to have to figure out where they're going to get their shooting from. Because as it sits today, this Kentucky team, thankfully, is in the SEC, and the SEC does not have a bunch of good shooting teams. When you currently look at 3-point rate, Alabama is, I guess that's conference only 3-point rate. We'll have to see what the 3-point rate ends up being once all the conference games really get going. But I would garner to guess that there are not many teams in the SEC that are going to have an elite 3-point shooting team. Even Georgia, that just beat Auburn, they shot 38% in the game, but on the season they are 32% shooting team. So Kentucky should be able to, still play with a bunch of teams even without great shooters. But you were never going to be able to play against a team like Alabama. You're never going to be able to play against a team like Vanderbilt, honestly, if you don't get some shooters, because I think that there are some teams in the SEC that can absolutely rain it from deep. And you played against Alabama and gave up 15 threes. And those 15 threes are when Alabama had 3 of our big time shooters combined 1 of 14. So it could have been worse. Right. And it wasn't like those were bad shots that were being taken. LeBaron Philon and Latrell Wrightsville were taking open shots. They just missed them. So, as crazy as it sounds, 15 threes being a little bit of an off shooting night for certain guys, it was, right? So I think that's something that Kentucky's going to have to do if they want to change it going into conference play, is they're going to have to find some shooting, or they're going to have to change up their play style a little bit to fit the roster that they have, because as of right now, the shooting just is not there. In terms of Alabama takes on Vanderbilt, as I mentioned, on Wednesday. Vanderbilt currently undefeated. To put into perspective, I know we've been talking about how good certain teams are. Vanderbilt is somebody that Alabama will be the best team that they've faced to this point, but they have a bunch of pretty good wins. They don't have a great win yet, but they have a bunch of pretty good wins. They have a win over UCF, which is currently 47th in KenPom. They've got a win over VCU at 42nd, St. Mary's at 30, SMU at 39, Memphis at 77, Wake Forest at 61. So all those teams are really good KenPom teams, in that 30 to 70 range. Much better than many teams in the SEC have faced, right? Put that where their best win would be about as good as Clemson, so to speak. However, also to put it into perspective, Alabama just beat Kentucky. Kentucky's number 25 in the country, and it's Alabama's third highest win. That would be the number 1 win that Vanderbilt has had this season. So the question becomes, is Vanderbilt a good team or a great team? Or even great or elite? Because I think that they're a good team at a minimum, right? KenPom has them officially at number 7 in the country. They're 9th in offense, 13th in defense. Mark Byington has done a really, really good job in Nashville, getting that team ready to play. They are taking on South Carolina today. In South Carolina. South Carolina is not a great team. I would suspect that Vanderbilt is going to get the win on the road. I think that Vanderbilt is just clearly the better team, and it's not particularly close. I would suspect Vandy probably wins by 10 or more. And I think that sets up the matchup in Nashville. It's going to be happening on Wednesday evening, as I said. Vandy is a great team. I think that the thing that they have done that kind of jumps off the page at KenPom, and I will do a full breakdown, so I will record an episode to kind of break down this game. But the thing that jumps off the page to me is Vandy has had a little bit of a problem fouling this season on defense. But when they have not had issues fouling, they're one of the best teams in the country at steal rate. They're one of the best teams in the country at forcing teams to take long 2-point shots. That's a new stat that is that KenPom has put out. They're really good at forcing long twos, and they're really good at closing out on shooters. Right, when we talked about Kentucky was giving up a lot of assists and a lot of 3-point attempts. Vandy is right the opposite. They're not giving up a ton of 3-point attempts. They're not giving up a ton of assists. They're making you win more in ISO ball because they're playing solid team defense. And so the question becomes, what is Alabama going to do? Alabama obviously has faced some teams similar to this. I think that Alabama will be prepared for this matchup, but I do think that they will have a full test on their hands. I think that this is in a 5-point game in one way or the other. I will see who I end up picking. I want to see how this Vandy South Carolina game goes later today. But I do think that this Alabama Vanderbilt game should be a very, very good one because, as I said, Vanderbilt is one of the best teams in the SEC. I think that they will be near the top of the SEC. Like I said, they have not played quite as top of competition as Alabama has to this point, but that should not take away from how good a team they are. If you're new here and you are not currently subscribed, I really would appreciate if you could do me a favor and subscribe. I know we're currently just under 900 subscribers, and we're going to try to push to 1,000 if we can get 1,000 before the end of basketball season. As always, I'm going to be putting out episodes before and after every game. So we're going to preview and break down every Alabama basketball game this season. Sorry for the non-breakdown of the Yale game. I was traveling to my fiance's sister's house in Tampa. I did go ahead and pre-record the Kentucky episode so that y'all could have that out. But I will, as I said, I will do a quick recap of the Yale game. I will recap this Kentucky game, and I will preview the Vanderbilt game. Probably will try to get that recorded tomorrow afternoon. So that'll be coming out tomorrow night for anybody that's interested. I know I've put out a lot of my Kentucky thoughts here, some basic Vanderbilt thoughts. Thank you so much, everybody, for joining. I really do appreciate it. We will continue to do live streams after games. I will let you guys know on Twitter. So if you follow me on Twitter, I will make sure to say when live streams are going to come out. And then additionally, if you are subscribed to the YouTube channel and have your notifications on, I always try to schedule them before I go live so that everybody knows, like, hey, this is going to be happening. Even if I only can give you a 20-minute head start, you kind of have an idea I am going to be going live. But thank you so much, everybody, for joining today. I really do appreciate it. And I'm going to catch you guys in the next episode. Peace.